At this year's GameCon, the Star Citizen branded controllers that we have been waiting to see finally made an appearance. I, for one, am feeling a little disappointed in what I saw. Since a great majority of the ships in this game seem to like the dual joystick setup, I was expecting to see at least a dual joystick device. But I could put that aside, as that is what I would like to see a Star branded interface to look like, but that's just my opinion. I'm also very unsure about the manufacturer that CIG has decided to go with. Unfortunately, Mad Catz and Cytec, who Chris Roberts has decided to go with, do have a history of creating peripherals using manufacturers that don't have a very high standard of quality when using cheap materials that like to wear out after only 100 hours or so of use. This is especially prevalent in their original X52 Hotas controller line, although with their X52 Pro they seem to have solved a lot of the original problems that came from the shoddy workmanship. Unfortunately, their X55 line, those problems began to reappear. One of the main Cytec problems is they like to use plastic interior parts for their moving assemblies instead of metal ones in order to keep the costs of manufacturing down. While they are able to sell them at cheaper prices because of this, it also causes a large problem with wear out. Finally, for anyone who's familiar with Mad Catz product lines, every controller that Chris Roberts showed off was essentially a reskin or rebuild of an already existing one, as you can see in the following pictures. The first controllers that he showed off, he called the entry-level controller. It looks to me like they took the flight stick off of the X52 Pro and attached it to the base from the Mad Catz Cyborg line of controllers, which then got a reskin to look like it came out of the verse, and then replaced the mini throttle on the Cyborg's base with a sort of half and half between a true Hotas throttle and a mini throttle, although they did add trackballs to the joystick and throttle and what appears to be several toggle switches along the base. It still looks to me like very little thought went into the prospect of it being an original design. And then there's the keyboard. This literally is a reskin of the Mad Catz Strike 5 keyboard line, albeit one in which you can detach the mini throttle from the base of the entry-level model and then attach the two sides to the keyboard. I had a chance years ago to pick up the Strike keyboard, but I passed on it because of the price. I don't remember what it was, but I couldn't afford it at the time. I would assume something like that would easily cost around $200 today. I am also unfamiliar with any complaints about the keyboard. At least I've never read anything on the internet about it, but then I've never really looked anything up for that information either. And finally the big boy, the real Hotas in the room. This thing looks exactly like the X65 Hotas that Cytec came out with a few years ago, and Chris Roberts even said that the design was based on the X65 controller. This kind of worries me though, because the X65 tossed the moving joystick right out the window. They did this in favor of new technology called a force sensing input system. Now this was supposed to have the ability to detect the amount of force that you applied to the joystick from any direction and use that to move whatever you were flying accordingly. The downside is the controller did not move, not one little bit. So the natural feeling that you get from moving the joystick around and seeing your ship move in turn can't happen. I'm hopeful that when they come out with this controller, it'll have the full range of motion with the device, as I noticed that at the base of the joystick, it does have a spring. It has the trackball on the joystick as well, but I did not see a trackball in the picture of the throttle, which brings to mind that this assembly, the original X52, or X52, I should say X65, had two back pieces that were essentially a button panel on the left side and a decoration panel on the right that you could press the buttons on without having to take your hand off the throttle. For some people, their hands were so big that they could not bring the throttle to maximum without bumping their knuckles into the bumping button panel. And since Star Citizen is a heavily interfaced game, I'd like to see both of those panels used, not just one panel and then a decoration. And finally, there's that display panel. Now, Chris Roberts said that it would actually display your ship's stats on it, and that it was an OLED display that was touch enabled like a tablet would be, though he is quick to say that he did not know that for sure. As awesome as that would be, I highly doubt it's touch enabled. In fact, I doubt it's actually a display at all and more of a decoration. But even if it were not a decoration, I think a touch paddle would be better placed on the throttle instead of the stick base, because the one device you never want to take your hand off of in a firefight is the stick. Whereas on the throttle, you have time to take your hand up off of the stick, and or I should say off of the throttle, and make adjustments needed to your ship's systems. Although even then, it's probably not a wise idea to take your eyes off the main screen in a firefight to look down at the controller and see what you're trying to adjust. Which brings us to our last bit on this. Here we have a mouse and a headset that have the Star Citizen logos and brandings to them, but all they are is literally the Rat5 mouse and the kit-free headphones. So there's nothing unique about them at all. They're just reskinned products of what's already been existing, which honestly I have no problem with that. The mouse itself is just not my cup of tea. I don't care for the feel of it. I was at Best Buy and they had them on display, and yeah, I know you can make them fit your hand, but I truly enjoy a multi-button mouse, an MMO style mouse like the SteelSeries Warcraft mouse or the Logitech G90. Those right there just are my thing. I like having multiple controls at my thumb tips. So that's my opinions on the offerings for a Star Citizen branded Hotas setup. And I'm hoping that as time goes by, we'll get more information on them, and maybe they'll get some feedback from people who attended Gamescom or watched it on YouTube while it was streaming or whatever, so that they can get an idea, CIG can get an idea of how people feel about them and be able to get that feedback back to SciTech Mad Cats, and perhaps they'll make some changes. Maybe we really will see a touchpad on there, since Chris Roberts kind of blurted that out without knowing for sure. But we'll find out. So I'm interested to know what your thoughts and feelings are on the controllers that were announced at Gamescom. Please leave your messages below, and I'd love to read them and maybe respond to some of them. And so have a good day, and I will see you all in the verse.